Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Thursday. It's January 27th. This will be our chart lesson for today, and no chart lessons on Friday, so this will wrap up our week. Uh, we won't be back again until Monday. But I thought I'd start off again by showing you the uh, daily chart with the envelope on it, and you can see we're still in very oversold territory, but you can see the support down here that's holding. And prices are really stuck between the support. There's what we have is a little range going on here. Let's just draw it on here. And the channel still seems to be in play as well, but we're not able to go lower because of the support. So eventually, if we test this support enough and don't go lower, we're probably going to shoot higher, even if only temporary. So, but as of now, it looks like we're in a little tight, congested range type area to me, and so we'll just have to follow this and see how it, how it turns out. But as of now, um, prices are not going anywhere. They're not going lower, but they're not going higher either. Support's right around here on somewhere right around here, around 40.20 to 40.30 or so, and our resistance is, and then support is down here, mostly around 42.80 or so, and but we've dropped all the way as low as 42.12. So that's what we're looking at. But for now, this thing is not, I mean, these are big enough moves that there are trends within the range, but just be real careful getting long into this price level or short into this price level, because it could turn out badly for you if you do. Because these are 150, 200 point moves from top to bottom. Let's just see what it is from the top line to the bottom line. And of course, it's been further. So you can see that's 125 points, maybe 120 anyway. And if you just take it from complete high to low, I mean, that's 234 points. So you don't want to be, so just be careful, even on good uh, trends, trying to get long into these highs and these lows right here. Actually, I would probably be careful getting short anywhere below 4,300 or so. So anyway, let's switch over to the other chart and get through the trades. Okay, here's a look at our intraday, our 2,000 tick intraday chart, and we traded a little higher late in the trading session, and now into the new trading session, overnight session. But for the most part, the overall day was just a range day, and that's pretty much what we've been seeing. And we trend up, we trend down, we try to trend back up, and most of the movement is happening in the overnight when the volume's thin, and then when the volume picks up, it's usually to the downside. So anyway, let's zoom in here and take a closer look and go through the trades and wrap this day up and wrap this week up. You had to be patient this morning because it was a while before we really had a decent trade. You really had two different channels going here. You had the yellow channel, which was a spiking channel, and then you've got the blue one that just didn't really hold. So technically, I don't think the blue one's valid. I think you had the break of the yellow one and new high, and I left this on there just so I could show it to you. Obviously, you want to be aware of those two swings, but I don't think they really. We did find some. We did shoot through the trend line right there and then find some resistance and try to go higher, but I just don't think it was valid. I think this was the better look, and this is just a correction, just really sideways stuff before prices could actually push lower. But again, let's go over here and start at around 7 and show you our 7 o'clock came just as we're making this rally here into these highs, and then we just kind of pushed up and started going sideways, and I don't see anything there that would tempt me. I mean, the trend is up here, It's obvious this trend line's in play, and I just don't see anything here that I would risk to go long. And we jump up, and you got a little channel working up. You get a close outside, move to a new couple of legs to a new high, and it just really kind of keeps trending higher. You would expect prices are going to try to reach this upper trend channel line, but they don't and come back to the trend line again. And here you got multiple tests across here, and it does bounce right off the key entry point, right where you'd like to enter, but there's just no setup. It runs higher. I mark this as a possibility because technically you get a first entry and then you move up here and you get a second entry and it fails right off the EMA there, and you would expect a retest of the high on this. Let me just color that so I can, this little green channel, just to make it easier to see. So you may take that. It's not a great trade though, so, but you might take it. So something to think about. But it's almost 9 o'clock and we haven't had a decent trade yet, really. And we do shoot it. We do shoot up. You can see it turns out to be a great move. It's because it's a trap and it's going to act like a trap. And we run up here and then we run into some resistance and we just keep bouncing along. But notice you got a new low there. You test it once, you test it twice. Plus that's also a second entry long. So you may take that trade. Just make sure on your entry you've got room to get out before that little high right there. And the better entry you get, the better. Now, you probably could have got a tick or two extra down here to give you a little more room just in case. It doesn't matter because it makes a new high, but you don't really want to risk that because sometimes it won't make a new high and it'll turn down on you and stop you out. So just something to think about. But I like that trade right there. Just make sure if you get, maybe you use a limit order. I don't know if you really take that second entry with a buy stop right there. You need to measure it and see how much room you got and but it is at the midline when we're still expecting prices to maybe try to go higher. But when we don't go much higher than that, we come and we get the break here. You got to take into account that we couldn't get back up to the upper trend channel here or here on these last big moves up. So that's not a good sign. So be careful taking longs down here as well. Definitely don't take any shorts yet, but be careful taking longs. And there's actually a break higher that failed and turned down here. It's probably going to trap a lot of longs, and they're probably going to have to exit. I didn't mark it. It's one you could argue for it to be green, but you got to be careful going short in a spiking channel, two-tiered channel that doesn't have a break yet. But there are some clues. We came up short here from reaching the upper side. We came up short here from reaching the upper side. You do have a trap here, and already from this breakout, and when this one breaks higher and fails, anybody that got long here is probably going to exit, and probably anybody that got long up through here is probably going to exit because they don't want to give back their profits. So then we run on down. There is a failed second entry long right here, right off the key entry point, but it's right into the trend line, and you see what happens. It bounces. You don't want to take that trade. I mean, this might be enough for a convincing close outside, and we could go higher from there. So I don't like that one. Even though this channel is still in play, that's just too risky. And you see what would have happened to you. I don't know if it broke lower first and turned up. I think it did, if I remember correctly. So if you did go short there, you got stopped out. Now, if it went higher first and then turned down, I still don't recommend that trade, but it would change things a little bit. But it's looking like congestion now because you got 3 bars stacked up, 2 of them with no bodies, or real tiny bodies. So anyway, we drop on down, make a new low, and you actually get a first entry short, a second entry short, and another second entry long. So it's almost a repeat pattern of this. And usually if you see a repeat pattern, if it works once, it'll probably work again. So if you notice that, take that trade. If you don't understand repeat patterns, and really there's not a whole lot to understand, you just have to learn to spot them and know that if you see that pattern and it plays out once, and it continues to play out during the day, it's amazing how often you'll see those same patterns over and over. And generally, if they play out once and work, they'll work the next couple of times as well. So I didn't draw the upward trend channel here. A lot of times I don't draw them on the retest, but you probably should. And you can see you get a close outside, a new high. You make a lower high here, which is tempting to go short. But look at all that sideways congestion, and that's definitely meets the rules of congestion. So you got to be careful with it. But you do make there's actually a first entry, second entry. So technically by the counts, that's a failed second entry long. But this looks like one move up and then a second. It looks like two legs down. And so this looks like the failure. And so you could take that one. I marked it green again because it's a little convoluted. Based on the actual counts, it's not a failed second entry long. But in the big scheme of things, I think this is a two-legged correction, and you're going to get another leg down. So I think there's two legs down, and that's still a failure. That's very advanced. So for you newbies, don't even think about it. Don't confuse yourself with it. Don't waste a lot of brain power on it because it's way above your head. And I don't mean that condescending, but the reason I say that is because if you're new, you need to be concentrating on the basics. Don't try to do some of these more advanced things because all it really does is slow you down, make the learning harder, and make this whole situation harder. Stick to the basics, and then once they start to really come to, because some things build on others, and these advanced trades build on having a very solid base with the basics. So keep that in mind. There it goes. And it really, this one was tempting too, because this really looks kind of like we tried to go higher a couple of different times here, and it's such a big bearish bar. I didn't mark it, but mainly because that bar is 41 ticks, and it's just really dangerous entering way down here, even though there's a good chance we're going to make another move down here at a minimum, because this is a two-legged correction. So that's technically there's a hidden second entry there, but again, technically it's not even hidden because there's a first entry right there, and then it turns higher and then turns back down. So that's a second entry short, and that's a great signal bar, but it's just it's so big. I mean, 41 ticks. I mean, that's, if you're wrong, you're going to take a huge hit. So I mean, it takes it looks like it takes very little heat, but that's 3 points of heat you take after it breaks lower. I mean, actually, it probably ticked up here some before it turned down. So you might not have taken quite 12 ticks of heat, but you could have. You could have taken more because it could have come way back up here and tested this little breakout area. So, but I didn't mark that one, but it's another one that if you can find a little better way to get in it, maybe you take it or maybe you risk it. Depends on your trading and where you're at. And but I think for most people, you just skip that trade. There is some sideways stuff there, but I don't really look at that as congestion. Notice your highs are not really all equal and your lows are really not all equal. And you don't have that doji or bar with no body or a very tiny body there. So, but if you skip that because of the overlap, nothing wrong with that. There is another failure here, but it's too far away from the EMA, and you really wouldn't have had this trend line confirmed yet. Now, if you did confirm that, if that trend line would have been confirmed, I'd say maybe you take it right there, but it's not. So you get your first close outside convincing, you make a new low, and then you're just working sideways. And again, I don't see anything here I like, because you've already got a break in a new low, so you need a really good setup. This one's tempting, but the signal bar is not good enough. And if it was, you'd have plenty of room to scalp out on a failed break, because it's probably going to fail on the first breakout and then fail out the other side. That's generally fairly typical. But now you got to close outside and two legs down. And then you make a higher low right here with still plenty of room back to the EMA. So you may take that one. Again, it's not a perfect setup. You really need to know what you're doing. But on a breakout of this, after this trend, this whole move is pretty much played out, you're going to probably at least come back to the EMA and probably come back and test this, and it may even go higher. And you can see it found resistance. Let's just draw that. You can see it found resistance there. But that's notice you got a new low, first entry, second entry, and it fails. And we just went out the high side here, so we can probably at least look for that for where we need to be concerned. So on the trap here, I like that one. You can see it shot up pretty quick and trapped everybody. You didn't get a runner, a big runner there, but you did get a runner. Then you make another new low and a first entry and another second entry that fails and gives you that nice signal bar. Now there is some congestion across there, but we're making higher highs and higher lows here, and that's a failure to the downside and a very nice signal bar. So most likely that many attempts to go lower, we're probably going to run up. I mean, I would just look for a measured leg based on this one. That would be my target. And you can see we backed off right there. And that's because people that know this stuff will take profits right there. That's probably where I would have took my profit, right in front of that. Although it does run up again, you actually get a close outside and a new high here. Then you make a lower high and a big bearish bar and all that room back to the EMA. I like that trade. It's one of the better trades we actually had today. So then we push through the EMA, we pull back. There's another hidden second entry here. Technically there's a first entry and that is a second entry, but I'd count this as a double bottom, so it looks like one leg up. Even if you would have looking at that, if you were looking at that as a second entry, it didn't trigger. But a lot of times people will take this trade right here. When you see that sideways kind of equal bottoms, it doesn't have to be perfectly equal either. Treat that like a new low because a lot of times you're going to get two legs up, and this is really only one leg. Looks like one leg. So so your second entry is right here, and that bar does qualify. It actually broke higher and turned down. So that's another one you might have taken. I didn't mark it, but you might have taken it. Just make sure when you enter here, you got room to get out before the EMA because it could bounce there. Although everything to the upside is played out here, the two legs, you actually went further and you're making lower lows and lower highs here. And this move down through that shoots through the EMA, that's your first little clue. Hey, something's changing. So we could go lower. And if you don't, again, I marked that one green, but it drops on down and then quickly you get a very easy second entry with a clearly good signal bar. So go short right there, and you can get a runner on that one. You get an easy runner on it. And if you just ran down and when it broke before the first green bar there's your 11 points, $562 on one single contract. And so now you bounce, you get a first entry short, and you get a second entry short. And when that fails, generally I'd like this to be on the other side of the EMA, but it does push through there a couple of times, and you got to go long above that. So if it breaks higher there, you're probably going to at least get a scalp. But this thing could go higher. And you can see that's another easy move, almost a guaranteed runner. And if you do the same thing, one tick below there's you another 10.5 points. Now this one's a little more aggressive. That's for a little more experienced traders. And then maybe you don't even take it. If it's green, that means it's aggressive. If it's red or blue, then that means it's probably a clear trade that you should probably take. So we run up here, we close outside, get a new high, and you think we might go lower, and we just start chopping sideways. So you got to be real careful here. I marked this one as a possibility simply because we're making lower highs and lower lows, and we did make a new high there and try to go higher once, twice, and it fails, and it does close below the support there, which we actually had already pushed through it a little bit. So you might enter there, but ideally you'd want it to come back and test that again and hold, and it does right here. And that also the reason I like this one, not just because of the range, but you can clearly see the trend line working down through there. I need to adjust that a little bit. I was off a little bit, but anyway, it comes across the outside of that, and that would have been off the key entry point. And again, you get another one with a lower high off the key entry point with a big bearish bar. Now you've tested this underside. This actually should be just a tad higher. twice from underneath, and boom, off it goes. And again, you get another runner here. So on these days where you can catch runners, they really change your mass. So just keep that in mind. I don't see anything else here I'd want to enter until finally you make a new low. You actually notice you push through the EMA here, or I'm sorry, midline, and you couldn't come back and really test it because of the trend line. So finally it gets a break in new low, and it comes back on two legs and tests the EMA and the midline together. It gives you a fairly bearish bar on a second entry short, and you haven't touched the lows yet. So as long as you got plenty of room to get out before here, take that trade. That's a nice little trade. Then it tries to go higher once, twice, and you get two legs again back to test that. Really, you could look at that as a second entry because there's matching lows. So that's a second entry short, but that bar doesn't qualify as a second entry short. It's not bearish enough. It's too neutral. But because of the first entry, second entry, you might throw in the trap, and the combination of the two right at the midline and the EMA. I like that one, and you see it drops down pretty quickly. You wouldn't have got a big run. Well, you probably would have got a runner out of that. So it just wouldn't have happened as quickly. And drops on down, and you get another first entry, second entry. But now you're close enough that it's probably off the lows. Looks like it anyway. Not a very good signal bar on a second entry. Can't take that. And then finally it bounces. And this is a fairly strong downtrend. So you don't really want to be looking for longs here, especially not when they're just kind of chopping around and right at the midline or right at the EMA. But you notice it comes up here and you get an overshoot, and then you make a new high, and you get that huge bearish bar. We have no break of this yet, but because of where this sets up and the fact that we got an overshoot and another new high, I like going short there. You do get a lower high here, but by the time that sets up, you're going short right into the EMA, and you definitely have congestion. There's your your small bodied bar. So that was a little questionable. You might still argue for it to be green, but I didn't mark it. I wouldn't take that trade. It's too risky. And you see it did break lower and bounce, and it came close to stopping you out if you did go short there, but it held on, and it would have been another nice trade. But that right there is a great reason why I don't like that trade, because that's what can happen to you, and many times that will stop you out and then go exactly where you thought it was going to go. So it's just a risky trade. But notice how we drop on down. You get your first close, and you get two legs back, and notice that high, and so you get a triple test of that resistance area, and you get a lower high with a big huge that actually broke higher and turned down. I like going short right there. That looks like two legs back to the EMA. We did just come off the high, so we're probably shooting for the lows here. Sometimes you won't make it, but when you get a good setup with a trap like that, you just about almost have to take it. And again, you probably get a runner here. Off it goes. Another nice trade. There was probably a failure on the second entry long here, but that's not where you want to see a second entry long. The reason we couldn't get back to the EMA probably is the midline there, but I wouldn't take that. Too much support right across there. Just sit tight. I mean, if you're already in this trade, maybe you ride that out, but don't enter a new short right there. And then we drop down here, and we just start kind of going sideways. We do get a break here and a new low. And there, technically, that's tempting to go short. And there is some sideways, but it's an inside bar. If it would have broke higher, even though that's sideways, I don't see the doji looking bar, the no body. So you might have taken that one. But we're just chopping along here. Now, there was a triple test here, and you could call that a second entry. We still below the EMA, very bearish bar. I didn't mark it because we bounced at the midline right here, and it does look a little sideways. Now, that bar is, I mean, it's, if it's one tick less, you probably call it the no body bar, but it's so close, it's just too risky. And even though this trade worked, notice we didn't get back to the lows. But once you see, I mean, if you continually go back and forth, and you don't bounce at this midline, then don't worry about it. Take the trades. But if you see it bounce, and the next one, be more careful about it. And you see it bounced here a couple of times too. So that just makes that suspect. But then we break out and go all the way back to the trend line. And we had no break of this trend line yet. We got a failed breakout and a big bearish bar way away from the EMA. Technically, you need a lower high or something, but you may take that trade just because of how it sets up and where it sets up. And then, of course, your lower high comes here, but again, it's right into that midline, and so I don't like going short right there, even though it worked. You know, the two previous times it bounced, and it looks like it tried to bounce here again. That's why it actually ends up giving you an outside bar here. Notice it's outside that bar. It's because it did bounce there. It probably broke higher first and then turned down, and it bounces and closes there on this side. And so it's just too risky to go short there. It works, but next time it may not. Now you might have went short here because now you got a first entry, second entry, and if it breaks lower here, it's a failure. And you can see they trap some longs. People thinking they're picking a bottom here. Time to start getting long and see how fast and furious that runs down. Of course, it bounces there, but that went all the way to the lows before you really bounced here. And that's because it's a trap. So I like that one. It's not a perfect setup, but if you understand traps and stuff and you're more advanced, take that trade. And of course, now we bounce and we get a break. No reason to go short there, and then we're rocketing out of there. And I don't see any reason to go long here. I'd look at this as a double bottom, so one leg up. So you're probably going to get another one. Too bad we didn't get a second entry there. But it rockets on up. And it runs back here, and it tries to go higher once, twice, and you got a hidden second entry. That far away from the EMA, and it looks like one leg down, and this looks like a two-legged correction, so you're probably going to get another leg down. And sure enough, you do. It bounces again. And that is a lower high, but the EMA hasn't give way yet, so I think it's too risky. And you see it took a little while. Notice how it bounces a couple of times before it finally pushes through. Now that is a little bit of a repeat pattern from what we had over here, but it's not quite the same because it's not at the key entry point like this was. It was still holding. So I wouldn't really consider that a repeat pattern. The pattern looks the same, but the setup type is where it happens is not quite the same. And I don't see anything I would take down through here. You get a break, new low. I still don't see anything. We actually fail out all this support here and then break lower and fail and come back on a higher low. I like trading that as an engulfing bar when it broke through. If you got enough room from here to here, maybe you take it. But again, that's a 31 tick bar, so it's a little risky. Notice it doesn't matter. But I would have probably traded this as an engulfing bar, and I don't know if I would have entered way up here. You could, and you might have treated this like a new low and a first entry and then a second entry, but this one's outside a bar, and you know, when it broke lower, you've already got your failure right there, and I don't think I would take that because it's inside that possible trend line, and you got what's setting up like congestion. So I just don't think you want to treat that like a failure. And then you run up here, still no entries. And again, you turn down right here. This is one I'd probably wait on a lower high, but you do get a close outside and a move to a new high with a big bearish bar way away. And that's a repeat pattern we've seen. You may take that one. I marked it green, but there is a reversal here. I didn't mark this reversal. Technically, it's not a reversal, but it's a lower high, and I didn't mark it because the signal bar is not good enough. Even though prices tried to go higher here, they never break higher. So you just got a high and a first entry. So no reversal there, even though it does kind of look like one. Same thing here. This looks a little like a reversal, but it's just a first entry. You move on up here, and you do get your failure right here. I didn't mark this one, but it's possible that you could mark it. I mean, it could be a failure, but we were so close to the highs right there. I didn't know if it was worth risking. So it's another one that you might risk. And actually, I think it broke higher and turned down here. And if you did enter there, it's an engulfing bar, and you got to wait till, and you got to keep your stop down here until this bar closes, and then you move your stop up here. You have to pretty much trade engulfing bars that way because you don't know where the low is going to be on this engulfing bar. So in that case, and this might have broke lower first. I wasn't watching price action very closely here. I didn't see this one, so my guess is it broke higher. Actually, it might have turned down and broke lower first and then went higher. It might have struggled to get through there. So in that case, you could trade it as it went through. Again, it's going to be an engulfing bar though, so your stop goes below the previous low until this closes, then you move it up here. It doesn't matter because it takes off and probably doesn't come back and even attempt to get you. But now you've got a break 2 legs up, and you got a first entry, second entry, no second entry long there that fails with room back to the EMA. So, and you can see this turns out to be a great trade. And again, you probably get a runner on this. And if you just get out right here, there's your $875 move on one contract. There's a little breakout pullback short, but don't take that right there. It's too big a chance it fails, which it does, but you could have scalped out, but a lot of times you won't get room to scalp out before it fails. And it runs straight on up, comes back, gives you a higher low. I didn't mark this one. I think you need to wait on a reversal here. There's a good chance we're going to get another leg up, but wait on a reversal because we're still underneath this support resistance right here, and that's not a perfect signal bar by any means, and I just think it's too risky. I mean, you could argue for it to be green on a higher low with that much room back to the EMA, but that's a fairly large move down, so there's a good chance it could break higher and still make a new low and go higher. But when it shoots back up through and pulls back and gives you a failed second entry short, when it breaks higher here, go long. Boom. That's another nice little move. And that takes you into 230. So 32 minutes here. I'm trying to keep these at least under 30. It's hard to do with all this price action and so many setups. So I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to wrap up our week. We'll be back again to do it Monday. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next.